9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting. I'm Councillor Claire Holland, Leader of the Council and Chair of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded and is being broadcast live. The recording of tonight's meeting may also be used for quality and training purposes. In the event that technical issues require the meeting to be adjourned and it cannot be restarted within a few minutes, further updates will be posted on the Council's Democracy Twitter account, which is at LBL Democracy. And I think everyone here knows that the fire exits are either side and the toilets are just out there. We've received no apologies for this evening's meeting. Job share voting arrangements. As set out on the agenda, the Portfolio for Healthier Communities operates under a job share arrangement. The current decision maker for Healthier Communities is Councillor Marcia Cameron. Councillor Jim Dickson will not be voting at this meeting. Declaration of pecuniary interests. Does any councillor have a disclosable pecuniary interest that they have not already declared? No, thank you. Nobody has indicated, so we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes from the previous meeting. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of January 2023 agreed as a true record of proceedings?
Agreed.
Thank you, colleagues. The minutes are confirmed as a true record. We will now move on to the next item, and this is the Revenue and Capital Budget 2023 to 2024. This will be introduced by Councillor David Amos, Cabinet Member for Finance and Cost of Living. Just before I hand over to Councillor Amos, I just wanted to say a couple of words about this item. This last year, and in particular this financial cycle, has been hugely challenging for us. The disgraceful economic mismanagement by this government continues, and it continues to have a severe impact on our residents and businesses, devastating those already at risk and plunging many more into crisis. It's had a massive impact on council budgets across the country, some in serious financial difficulty. And for us here in Lambeth, it has meant having to find significant savings at a time when families are already struggling and council budgets and public services were already creaking. And they're creaking because of 12 years of austerity. A phrase, I'm afraid, that has become all too familiar. So what does it actually mean in practice? It means cuts on top of cuts to local councils, which means local communities as well. And this started in 2010 when the coalition government came into government, and it has continued. And not just savage cuts to local government, but also cuts in all sorts of other services too. Cuts to our mental health services, cuts to our police, our justice system and our schools. Cuts which hit at the core of our community and people's ability to survive, yet alone thrive. The bedroom tax, tuition fees, cuts such as educational maintenance allowance. Do you recall that one? One of the first acts of the Tory Lib Dem coalition in 2010, cutting £30 a week to our poorest teenagers, a lifeline which had enabled working class kids to stay on at school, just cut. And I recall my son's own class where half the class stopped going to school overnight. These are just a few examples of how pernicious cuts are, how they impact those in our communities who face the biggest barriers in life. And on top of this, we now have a Tory-created economic crisis. But as with the last 12 years, it is a challenge that Lambeth has risen to. And I'm really proud that Councillor Amos and the rest of our cabinet, working together with our excellent officers, have stepped up. There are still significant challenges ahead and savings to be made, and residents and businesses who will continue to need our support to get through difficult times. But I'm confident that as we continue with our prudent financial management, as we have done over the past years, we will be able to target resources to those in our borough who need them most, and we will continue to invest in our communities. That's what you get with Labour in government locally, a prudent council relentlessly focused on economic, social and racial justice for our borough. Thank you, Councillor Amos. I'm now turning to you to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Chair. So tonight, as you've indicated, Chair, I'm presenting Lambeth Council's Revenue and Capital Budget 2023-24 and propose that its recommendations be endorsed by Cabinet. Just a word of thanks by introduction, as you've already said, Chair. I want to give my personal thanks to the finance team led by Hammond, the officers at all levels right across the council, my fellow cabinet members and other councillors for the incredible hard work, intelligent and thoughtful hard work that's been going on since the early summer last year to get us to the point that we've now reached regarding the medium-term financial strategy and a budget for 23-24. And I'm really pleased to say that we set ourselves some pretty demanding milestones back in the summer. We've met all of those as a result of that hard work. So thanks, Hammond, and your team in particular. So a few words of introduction from myself, and then I'll hand over to Hammond, Director of Finance, before we go into our discussion on this item. The last year has presented great challenges to Lambeth as we emerged from the pandemic into a cost of living crisis, the impact of the war in Ukraine, the Tories' dangerous mismanagement of the UK's economy, as indicated, Chair, the instability of leadership at the heart of the Conservative government at Westminster, and the negative effect of Brexit becoming ever clearer. We know that enormous challenges remain in the year ahead. Continue to deal with the growing cost of living crisis, be difficult for people in every corner of our borough. With the Office for Public Budget Responsibility, the OBR, anticipating living standards to 7% over the next 2 years. Lambeth Council has stood shoulder to shoulder with our residents, community groups and businesses through the pandemic. Now the Council's focus is on supporting our residents through the cost of living crisis, working hard to help the people in our borough who have been impacted the most. Just as during the pandemic, we've once again seen the very best of Lambeth, our communities together, coming together to support each other during these times of hardship. In response to the rising cost of living, Lambeth Council has already distributed over £8 million of targeted financial support for those who are struggling, with support ranging from free school meals in the holidays for those on low incomes, to providing direct payment to households struggling to pay their bills, to helping put money back into the pockets of more than 27,000 people across Lambeth. And we've also reduced the council tax bills of over 18,000 households to nil as part of our expanded council tax support scheme. Despite much tumult, yet again, local government faces significant uncertainty on future funding. The local government finance settlement published just before Christmas last year gave some short-term certainty to local authorities, but continues to leave the question of long-term, sustainable and fair funding for councils unanswered. This is the fifth one-year funding settlement in succession, which considerably constrains councils in their ability to plan financially for the long term. After a decade and more of Tory-led and Lib Dem supported austerity, increased demand for essential services and now rising inflation, any increase in funding, however limited, is of course welcome. However, it should be noted that London Borough's core spending power is still 18% lower in real terms than what was in place in 2010-2011. So based on calculations by London councils, which represents all councils in London, a third of the increase of funding to London boroughs represents government presumptions that councils increase their council tax and adult social care precept, with council's central grant adjusted down accordingly. Crucial point to make. London still faces a funding shortfall of up to £100 million next year due to existing and growing demand pressures on services, particularly social care and temporary accommodation, rapidly increasing inflation, and of course the ongoing impact of the pandemic. Local government is now almost overwhelmingly reliant on council tax and business rates growth to fund services to meet growing demand as the proportion of grant funding from central government diminishes. Central government continues to pass the burden of funding essential local services onto residents by forcing local authorities to raise council tax or risk severe impacts on vital services on which we all rely, rather than provide sustainable long-term funding. This is the Tory government's way of devolving the tough decisions to local government, to us in Lambeth, and residents that rely on their essential services again. We do not take such decisions lightly with regard to tax. We know council tax is a progressive form of taxation that is long overdue a review, and that significant challenges remain for some of our most vulnerable residents. As rises in council tax become a more significant factor in resourcing these essential services, we recognise that the cost of living crisis continues for our residents who are struggling to make ends meet. We are committed to protecting the most at risk by enhancing our cost of living support and the expanded council tax support scheme. To help residents this year, we will launch a £2.8 million cost of living support package. This will include a number of elements, which include more direct payments to assist people with their energy bills. This will include widening our criteria for receiving financial support so we can help more people who are struggling, and communal heating cost support for our most at-risk tenants. Thirdly, we'll also be investing an additional £1 million in our emergency support scheme and complementing London Labour Mayor's announcement today, expanding our free school meal provision. And fourthly, this package, as well as committing an extra £3 million to make sure our hard-working carers get a fair day's pay as part of Lambeth's ethical care charter. So despite rising demands for our services, sky-high inflation and years of reduced funding from Tories and Lib Dem governments, we're determined to do all we can to support those in greatest need. We're building affordable homes and standing up for private renters, making record investments in our award-winning parks, and creating thousands of apprenticeships to give the next generation in Lambeth the best start in life. We're leading the way on transforming our neighbourhoods to make them safer, healthier, and more equal places, and reducing the impact that air pollution has had on some of our most at-risk communities. But despite all these pressures and uncertainties, we've maintained, I'm pleased to say, a balanced budget for 2023-24 that will allow us to continue to provide essential day-to-day services and deliver on our priorities. Lambeth Labour is on the side of people in Lambeth, and our budget this year is all about standing up for those who've been hit hardest by the cost of living crisis. The budget proposals which have been developed will make a real difference to local households that are struggling the most. We are doing all we can, prioritising putting more money in people's pockets. We don't have all the answers, and we want to provide more support that our communities need. So we will continue to lobby government and call for national action to tackle inequality and proper support for vital services. So in conclusion, I ask Cabinet to endorse the recommendations set out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Amos. We have Hamed Maradia here as the key officer. We have no members of the public who've indicated they wish to speak, but Councillor Matthew Bryant has. I was going to turn to him, Hamed, unless you wanted to add anything at this stage. Councillor Bryant, you've indicated that you wish to speak. Would you like to come up to the table? Thank you for attending tonight. You're aware that you have 3 minutes to address Cabinet on this item. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a bad throat, so I'll try to take less than 3 minutes because my voice will probably give out before then. But obviously, at the outset, there are certain aspects, some aspects of the proposals put forward by the administration that our group are very would welcome and are pleased to see that, particularly the increased funding through the Household Support Fund, and the mention in Councillor Amos's presentation about the funding for people affected by the very steep increase in communal heating charges, which is something we raised at Cabinet last month. So I'm grateful that has actually been taken on board. And secondly, also the proposed additional payments to carers, which is again a priority for our group. However, it probably should not come as a surprise. There are a number of concerns we have about the figures presented, and there's a couple of questions that I would be grateful if either the Cabinet member or officers could address. The first one relates to the income budgets, which are set out in Appendix 4 of the paper. That's page 61 of the pack. Those show expected income this year to be exactly in line with budget for almost all the services, which it sounds like remarkably good budgeting. I'd like to know, is it really the case? Moreover, actually, the one area, secondly, that where income is forecast to exceed budget is parking charges and permits. However, the budget for next year is actually lower than the outturn for this year, yet the council is currently consulting on proposals to almost double the income from resident parking permits under the new proposed emissions-based charging scheme. So can the Cabinet member confirm what assumptions have been made in arriving at these income budgets regarding the proposed emissions-based parking charges? My third concern is related to the previous point, and this is particularly is the pace at which it is proposed to introduce the new emissions-based parking charges. Consultation on these was launched only last Friday and is not due to close until the 10th of March. Yet the plan still seems to be for these to come into force from April 1st this year. Whilst as a group we are generally supportive of a move to emissions-based charges, residents need to be given time to adjust to the new regime, because for some people it's quite a significant increase that they're seeing. They can't change behaviour overnight. And given all the other financial pressures which Councillor Amos has made us aware of, would the Cabinet member consider some transitional support to those car owners on low incomes who are particularly impacted by these charges? As we know, a lot of people on low incomes tend to have older cars because it's more difficult when they're not in a position to be able to replace them as frequently as other households in the borough. And my final point, Chair, is that I note that one of the key risks highlighted in paragraph 3.18 of the report is the increasing demand for temporary accommodation in the borough. Yet in the medium-term financial strategy that Cabinet discussed in December, this was one of the largest areas for proposed savings, and £1.1 million is penciled in for next year. Is the Cabinet member for housing still confident that these savings can be realised? I'm finished.
Thank you. I'll let you go over. Okay, so thank you for those questions. Hammond, I'm going to turn to you. Were you able to note them all down? I've noted them down as well. Okay.
I'll make a start and then I'll bring colleagues in.
Yeah, please.
So, for example, on Appendix 4, which talks about the heating charges,
Uh-huh.
the expected income is what we're currently expecting based on our existing forecast. As we approach year end, there might be minor adjustments to those numbers, but we expect them to be substantially in line with the budgets there.
Yep.
The 23-24 budgets, from the fees and charges, which is a small element of our income stream, what we tend to do is we wait a year after we've implemented any changes to make sure that the actual income that's coming in is consistent, and that's when we uplift the budgets. So, for example, the additionals on parking, we will wait until the proposals are implemented, quite sure degree of certainty that the income is going to come in, and that's when we're going to adjust the budgets at that point. That's why the difference in that.
Can I just add to that quickly? Is also the fact that we're out to consultation on those parking charges, so we cannot be uplifting budgets while we're consulting on a proposal. It isn't yet something that is finally agreed, so we have to bring back a consultation paper, discuss that with our Cabinet member before we can make any changes to budget figures.
Okay, thank you. And temporary accommodation.
Temporary accommodation question. We are working with Cabinet member and the colleagues in housing to do further detailed work that Cabinet asked around housing policy and homelessness support to kind of make sure that the savings proposed in the December paper can be realised within the timeline set.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for answering those questions. Thank you, Councillor Bryant. No other members or members of the public have indicated they wish to speak, so I'm going to open this up now to colleagues around Cabinet table. Are there any colleagues who wish to speak or ask a question on this item? So Councillor Chowdhury, Councillor Dickson.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Councillor Amos and officers for this budget. It's really important, as you've mentioned, Councillor Amos, the combined factors of 12 years of austerity since the coalition government that came to power in 2010 and slashed public services, the economic and societal impact of a Tory Brexit, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russian aggression in Ukraine, and the general merry-go-round that is at number 10 Downing Street, with several prime ministers going through, that have led us to this dire situation that we're in now, with rocketing energy prices, high inflation and the cost of living crisis. I mean, it's fair to say that we've not had a functioning government in the UK for the last 6 years. So if the last 6 years of the Tory government could be personified, it would be something that looks and feels like a combination of Voldemort, Dr. Evil and Baldric. I mean, Tories might know how to win power, but they've got no idea how to improve people's lives. And it would help enormously if they didn't keep messing up. And just like parents faced with a trashed sitting room following an unplanned party by their teenager that got a bit out of control, it's up to the grown-ups in local government to pick up the broken pieces and clear up the mess. So I'm proud of the work that we're doing in Lambeth to help the most vulnerable members of our community through the cost of living crisis, and we'll put all our efforts into continuing to help those who have the greatest need during this crisis. It's also abundantly clear that this government has zero ambition when it comes to sustainability and dealing with the climate crisis. I mean, that's why we're proud to be leading the way once again in local government with innovative programmes like the Big Shift and the Curbside Strategy, hoping that one day central government will catch up with us. So I'm really pleased that the Capital Investment Programme will support the delivery of savings relating to the use of facilities in our parks and open spaces and the development of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This involves really critical work around energy, flood prevention and climate change response infrastructure, as well as sustainable transport and public realm improvements and waste and recycling. I mean, all of these issues are things that our residents care deeply about. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Dickson.
Thanks very much. I'm not sure I can match the rhetoric. Great contribution, Rezina. Just wanted to add my thanks to David and the team for what I think is an excellent budget under really difficult circumstances. So well done. From an adult social care and health point of view, it remains very tight. As the report, I'm very pleased, points out. We have got huge pressures in adult social care and health, demographic pressures, which I think we all know about. We saw them in the census with increasing numbers of older people, but also more acutely unwell older people with long-term conditions which require a lot of extra support. So big increases in the number of clients in adult social care requiring nursing support. But also larger numbers coming into service and therefore requiring us to spend additional funding, as we absolutely should. And also other pressures. So, we see increasing numbers of young people transitioning from children's social care to adult social care with very significant needs, both physical and learning disabilities. And also we see a larger number of people with greater requirements for larger packages, particularly people with learning disabilities and autism. And if I could just give a little plug, we've just launched our autism strategy consultation last week, where we will hear from those who require support and the families of those who require support, and that may well lead us to a position where we think we need to do more. So all those things are weighing very heavily on our budget, but we think there is enough in the adult social care and health budget that we will be able to manage with very good sort of management of the budget from senior officers, and us taking difficult decisions around savings. And there are savings in there which we don't particularly want to take, but we think we can, in the interests of making sure that there is enough resourced in order to be able to meet the needs of people in Lambeth. And it's abundantly the case too that the government has very much marched us up the top of the hill in adult social care reform, and kind of left us there really for the next 2 years. We were all ready to implement the reforms which are needed in October this year, and now they've been delayed for another 2 years, leaving significant uncertainty and another big dilemma and problem, particularly managing providers who are expecting significant increases in the amount they get under our fair cost of care review, which they may not get immediately, and that will create stress and strains in what we're able to provide. However, with all those difficulties, I'm really pleased that the budget, David, is making resource available for implementation of the Ethical Care Charter. It's really important that we pay our staff what they require and what they're due for excellent work they do supporting people in need. So we're going to be able to now pay from the end of next financial year, the coming financial year, and into the following financial year, we're going to be able to pay full London living wage for everything that great set of staff do. So that's travel time as well as the care they provide, and I think that's really important, and I think it's a sort of great tribute to the values of us as a council that we're doing that at a time when funding is difficult. We're also, I'm very pleased to be able to say, with our really great work integrating adult social care with health, and again the report's kind enough to point out we're really advanced on this agenda, probably ahead of many other parts of London, and that's also enabling us to find better value for money from the budgets that we get, both from health and from care. And within that, we're going to be able, with help from the new integrated care system at South East London, they'll be able to make real inroads around health inequalities with our work to reach communities who in the past haven't always had the services they need around things like health prevention, blood pressure, diabetes, and lots of ways in which it's really important we understand the health needs and meet them out there in the community. So a budget under really difficult circumstances, but I think one with an awful lot of good things in it to meet the needs we see out in the community, notwithstanding the fact that we should have more, and were the national economy and public finances to be managed differently, we would have more. But I think a sort of, a great budget and one we can really work with. So thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you, Jim. I saw Councillor Cameron.
For years, local government has suffered from underfunding from central government, and I know, Claire, you've mentioned a lot of the bad stuff that they've impacted on local government, and it's impacted on our services, as you've mentioned, particularly our most vulnerable, especially in adult social care. We know that deprivation and poverty has a huge impact on people's health and outcomes. That levelled with the disaster of the economy and the government's half-baked reforms, which they're not confident in implementing. But thanks to David and his team and officers and everyone else, we have managed to balance the budget, and the strategies under the cost of living will help to mitigate the impact of government's bad decision making in regards to local government.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Thank you. Councillor Kind?
I just wanted to touch on two items. Firstly, free school meals and the announcement that was made today by the Mayor of London, and obviously immensely grateful to Councillor Amos for the work that he's been doing on balancing our side of how we make free school meals available. Free school meals has been a central plank of what Labour councils in London have been calling for some time. And I think it was October when Councillor Dickson and Councillor Cameron brought the right to food motion to Lambeth Full Council, and we supported formally the pledge for free school meals in primary schools. And despite all of the pressure from local government and from charities and campaigners for that, the government just refused to act. So obviously it's fantastic that the Mayor of London has stepped in for the school year that's coming up, partly because of the health benefits that gives of having access to nutritious food, but also because the pilot study that was done on universal free school meals by the last Labour government, which was then cancelled by the Conservative and Lib Dem coalition, demonstrated that there was an increase in attainment within primary schools by provision of free school meals, with a significant positive impact on education attainment, at Key Stage 1 and 2, but a particular impact on pupils from less affluent families and those with lower prior attainment levels. So all round had a great impact on the education of young people and a great impact on their health. But of course, we know that the Lib Dems and the Tories in government cut that like they cut so much else. And that's then sort of highlighted today by the local government secretary, who thinks that this is just the Mayor of London throwing millions of pounds at middle class families, despite the threshold for getting free school meals being £7,500, and you know, therefore describing everybody who earns £7,401 as being middle class and perfectly able to meet all of their requirements. So I think we should applaud the Mayor of London for that, and obviously keen to continue the work that we're doing on making that provision, including the provision that we put in during the holiday period for supporting those who get free school meals in term time. I think at the same time, I just wanted to, like Councillor Dickson said about the challenges in adult social care, highlight the challenges in children's social care, and particular thanks to Andrew and to Fiona for the work that they've done over the last 12 months in terms of getting children's services to where it is at the moment. And there are huge pressures there in terms of staffing challenges that come from a failure by the government to have a proper recruitment process and training process in place for social workers, and refusing to address the challenges that are there around where people work and reliance that London councils have on agency workers, but also not tackling the problem of how placements work for children's services and the extortionate fees that some providers charge in order to turn that into a business in essence. So again, then here we are putting some more money into children's services in Lambeth in order to follow the improvement journey that we're on and to correct the problems that have been there in children's services in the past, highlighted by ITSA. And I think that it's really commendable here, setting the record straight for the future, that we will invest when the government won't do that. They won't do it on free school meals, and they won't do it on children's social care, despite their own review from Josh McAllister saying they should. Government only putting £200 million in instead of the £2.6 billion that is needed, less than 10% of what's needed for children's social care. So real credit, David, for the fact that we've managed to be able to secure some additional funding this year for that.
Thank you very much, Ben. I saw Councillor Anyanwu.
Thank you, Chair. Sitting here and also listening to our Lib Dem colleagues coming in here talking about issue in relation to income generation, parking transition payment, variation of things, without single humility of apologizing about the mess his previous colleagues in government have made, and then also without actually looking into the level of work done by officers and Councillor Amos and colleagues here to actually put us in a healthier position than other local authorities that he knows some of them are increasing their council tax to massive level that we're not to be in here. He also knows that actually without the detail of work done in relation to income generation, we wouldn't be here. When they left this council, they left with no money. There was no money at all left. And then he sat there trying to lecture us about how budgets are managed. And I'm absolutely close to being angry, but I wouldn't let him do that. However, having said that, the support this budget is given to voluntary and community organizations are actually the ones picking some of our most vulnerable residents. The work is done in relation to commitment to our in-house, leisure and sport that are coming in. The absolute support we are seeing that happening in capital work in those facilities, creating more opportunities. He hasn't seen any of them. I haven't read them. Basically, he has to go and do his work properly if he thinks that he has any hope of doing anything in this council. To be quite honest, they have something else coming. The fact is, we have been put in a situation no other authority anywhere else in the board, except what has been since 2010. Still, we are operating as a council. Still, we are providing support to most vulnerable individuals. Still, we are helping, as Councillor Khan about free meals. He has to say to Councillor Amos and officers, thank you for the work you've done, and then help us to lobby the government that his party was involved to create more opportunities for those resources to come back into local authorities. He has not offered any lobbying partnership. He has not offered working with us to go and telling the central government. He has not offered anything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Donatus. I also saw Councillor Jacqui Dyer.
Thank you, Chair. I really want to congratulate Councillor Amos for leading along with officers what is a very difficult budget under a very difficult local, national, regional, international context, and creating something that under those immensely difficult circumstances has a level of coherency and ambition, even with those caveats. So I really welcome also the inclusive approach that his leadership has in creating this budget. I would like to mention that the budget came to the Equalities Impact Assessment Panel, which I chair, and I thought it really illustrative of the commitment that each of the directorates are paying to our council becoming one which is firmly evidence-based around equalities, equity, social justice and fairness, which is reflected in our manifesto and our commitment to deliver our manifesto commitments, that the directorate leaderships in the form of the strategic directors attended the Equality Impact Assessment panels. That's to say that the intention to have a real grip on making sure that we can demonstrate our real commitment to equity is going to be met. And so the budgets, and knowing that the equality impact analysis process is an ongoing process, something that we are committed to strengthen throughout this administration, I really welcome the appetite for that was demonstrated at that EI panel. We know we've got a long way to go, but we're ready to dig our heels in deep and make sure that we can be a leading exemplar of how, when you do this well, it can really deliver for those who are need for us to be absolutely at the top of our games in delivering for those populations that experience cumulative and multiple disadvantage and discrimination. And we know, and we're all committed as the cabinet and this administration to make sure that that is what we are attending to. So I also find it an opportunity to kind of really acknowledge how we are using the levers available to us, including our commitment to around a sustainable and inclusive economy, that our collaboration with our fellow stakeholders, working in partnership with others beyond ourselves to increase our capacity to deliver our commitments, utilising this budget accordingly, but equally bringing in other resource flows and income streams into the borough to assist us on our agenda for the people that we serve. And so our stakeholders, like our colleges, our universities, our business improvement districts, our membership, our constituents are all working with us to increase opportunities. And for my portfolio around apprenticeships, work experience, workspaces, opportunities to lever into the pockets of our constituents resources that they would not otherwise have, because the doors to opportunities they don't actually get access to, but we're making sure that they do. And so I welcome this, and I welcome this alongside when we look at people with protected characteristics, and in our local authority, this council has other non-statutory equalities considerations that we also embed within our equalities impact analysis, and those include the language. Lambeth is a very diverse borough in terms of language, our socio-economic and health and social well-being. These are also elements that we include in our equality impact analysis approach. And we also, hopefully very shortly, are going to be incorporating into our assessment that of care experienced people, a commitment that in our last council meeting we agreed. So it's with all these various different spokes to the wheel that I really welcome this budget and look forward to working in partnership with all colleagues to make sure that we do this to the best possible way that we can over the next few years.
Thank you, Jacqui. I can't see anyone else indicating, and I don't think there are any questions. I think that, you know, we've had 12 years of austerity, and there may be a terrible paucity of resource from the government to us in local government, but there's an overflowing of commitment, creativity and innovation in this room, and that is what is getting us through. So I really want to echo Councillor Amos's words and thank all the officers, Hammond, your whole team, all the strategic directors, but also all my cabinet colleagues as well, who've worked incredibly hard, not just to balance the books, but to balance it based on our values, as has been expressed so articulately by everybody in this room tonight. So given that nobody is indicating, I'm going to move us on to the recommendation, colleagues. It's on page 9 of the agenda in front of you, and that is to recommend council to note or adopt the recommendations that are then listed in the rest of that paragraph on page 9. So can we confirm, are these recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That concludes this evening's business. The next cabinet meeting is scheduled to